Your first step in covering a pillow is to take your existing pillow and measure the size of it. And I like to do it a bit snug. So I'm going to take it from side seam and I'm going to measure it across to side seam. And my pillow is close to 16 inches. So it's a 16 by 16 pillow. And I like to cut my fabric out the same size as my existing pillow. So I don't add extra for seam allowance. Now I do know that I'm going to be sewing around 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch, and that will actually shrink the size of my pillow cover. I do that intentionally. Again, I like to have a full, chubby, filled out pillow. I really don't like this look of loose sort of corners. So I'm gonna cut my fabric right now to have 2 squares that measure 16 by 16, the exact same size of my pillow. So if you had a pillow that was 18 by 18, you would do the same and cut 2 pieces of fabric measuring 18 by 18. So go ahead and cut your fabric out. So I've cut 2 of my fabric squares out measuring 16 by 16. And I've serged around the edges of my pillow cover. I am going to put a zipper in today so that it's a removable cover. And serging around your edges is a good idea. One, it will last longer with washing your cover. And a lot of times home decor fabrics fray a little bit more readily than other fabrics. So it's a good idea to seam finish if it's just by zigzagging the edges or by serging it. It's easier to do it right now when they're flat square. So I bought an invisible zipper that I'm going to put in today. I like putting in invisible zippers so that it's it's invisible. You won't see it as much in your cushion cover. All you see is this pull. And so an invisible zipper has the pull and the teeth on opposite sides of each other. So that's what you can look for when purchasing one of these. I've also bought one longer than my actual length of my pillow. I did that intentionally because I'm going to show you how to shorten a zipper in case you have to do that ever on your cushion. Sometimes invisible zippers are only found in certain colors in certain lengths, and so you'd buy the one closest to the match of your cushion, and if it was longer than needed, this is how you will be able to use it and shorten it in this video. So you're going to put your cushion cover face up, so this is my good side of my cover. I'm also going to put my zipper face up. It's a good habit to always get into. And then all I'm going to do is flip it face down. Okay, so now I have good sides touching each other. If I had a longer zipper, I'm going to put it so that I still have sort of a seam allowance. I'm not going to put my pull right up to the top. I'm going to put this sort of pinning so I have some space here to sew my sides of my cushion cover together. And I'm just going to pin it so that the top sort of edge of my zipper matches the top edge of my pillow cover all the way across. I am going to stop 1/2 inch from the end here and put sort of a marking because I'm going to stop sewing my zipper in 1/2 inch from the edge so I can shorten this. So go ahead and just pin that, and then I will show you how to actually sew in an invisible zipper. When putting in an invisible zipper, you will need a special invisible zipper foot. This is different from a regular zipper foot. This one is made for Janome sewing machines. I highly recommend that you get the foot that is made for your machine. They do sell a universal one at Fabricland, and you can use those. It's just not as user-friendly. So it has sort of 2 slots on either side of this prong that sticks out. It's a foot Z. So to change your foot when you're doing this for the first time, there's a little button or lever at the back. You will push that, and then using your presser foot lever behind your machine, you're going to lower your foot on top of that bar, and it will just pick up the new foot. Okay, so you're sewing an invisible zipper on a straight stitch and a normal 2.5 stitch length, so center needle, 2.5 stitch length, and on a straight stitch. Okay, so unzip your zipper because you cannot put in your zipper with it zipped up. So I've pinned it down and I've unzipped it, and now I'm going to put it into the groove sort of on the left side of the prong. I hope you can see that nice and close. And I'm gonna kind of unroll the teeth a little bit while I put my foot down. Okay, and I'll show you this a little bit closer up. I'm flattening my coil right now, but it naturally wants to roll in like that. So as I sew, I'm actually going to keep my fingers on that coil and keeping it flat down. And ideally I want to sew right in that sort of groove. It sounds harder than it is. Your foot really assists you in doing this. So I'll get us started here. And so you're going to flatten your coil. You're going to take a couple stitches forward, a couple back. And then yeah, as this goes down, all you're going to do is to flatten your coil. And my thread is just getting caught up at the back there. There we go. You're just going to flatten your coil and let the prong stay right into that groove. I'm going to turn off my light for a second so you can see that better. There we go. So yeah, you're just going to keep this coil undone and the prong running all the way down the whole length until you reach your horizontal pin that is a generous seam allowance. So my seam allowance is 4/8. I've put my pin more at 3/4 of an inch, so it leaves room for us to shorten our zipper. So one side of your zipper should be sewn in now. Again, I have it face up with my pull looking at us, and at the bottom I left about a 3/4 inch where I didn't sew it. I have my other side of my pillow now also face up. So just like our first side, we're gonna flip so our zipper goes down or our right sides go together, and we're gonna pin all the way along that edge to attach the other side of the zipper. Similar to what we've just finished, just making sure our side seams obviously line up and one edge isn't hanging out past the other, and stopping at the same spot down at the bottom so we can shorten it. So go ahead and pin this side, and I will show you how you put it in your foot on the opposite side. Now that you have your second side pinned in, you're going to go down the other side of the groove on your foot. So I'm going to again place my foot down. I'll remove that pin, and as I sew, I'm going to just keep my coil flat like that and not rolled up, keeping it flat and allowing that prong in my foot to run that crease where it was unrolled. So sew down similar to the other side and stopping 3/4 of an inch from the edge. So after you've sewn your invisible zipper and zip it up, it should look like a seam. I haven't pressed this yet with your pull sticking out here. If it won't zip up, it means two things. You either have a thread in the way and it gets caught up on a thread and you might just have to simply snip your threads, or you actually in fact stepped on or stitched on that coil as you were sewing your invisible zipper, and as soon as you do that, it won't zip up. So if that's the problem, you might have to take out a few stitches where you may have nicked your coil. But if you're using the proper foot, you shouldn't have that issue, and it should zip up and look like a seam. So I recommend you pressing out that seam so it lays nice and flat, and then we'll sew the last 3 sides of our pillow cover together. We are now going to shorten our zipper before we sew up the 3 sides. So we're going to get rid of this tail. We stopped about 3/4 of an inch from our end. I would like you to turn your machines onto a zigzag stitch. So I'm going to turn this to select zigzag. I'm going to put my width on the widest width and 0 stitch length. Essentially, it's going to just go back and forth and not move. I have put my normal A foot back on. That's really important because if you have your invisible zipper foot back on, it will break the needle. So make those adjustments, and then what you're going to do is you're going to take your tail of your zipper and you're going to kind of just wiggle it underneath the machine so that it's sort of right on top. Again, I'm going to turn off my machine just for a second so you can see this a little clearer without the glare. So I am as close to my fabric without stitching on my fabric as I can go. I'm gonna lower my foot, and without stitching on your fabric, you're just going to stitch about 10 times over your teeth. So I'm giving myself a new zipper stop. Okay, that's lots. I'm gonna lift this up and show you what I've done. So it's just provided me with this little new stop, and now I can clip off my zipper after that, so that now I do not have that extra tail. And in case my zipper did ever break, I've replaced it with a new stop, and then my teeth can't separate from each other when I zip and unzip my pillow. So now you're going to pin the rest of your sides all together around the other 3 parts that aren't sewn. So go ahead and pin all the way down here and along your other top edge and along your other side. And then I'm going to show you how you line up and meet up with an invisible zipper. Once you've pinned all the way around, I've made a marking to show you how we want to kind of snuggle up, but not actually stitch right on top of our stitching. So I'm about an 1/8 of an inch lower than my stitching, my invisible zipper, and I kind of pass it by about 1/2 an inch inward from the end of my sewing here. So I have my 1/2 inch seam allowance right here sort of marked, and so I'm going to come up here and pivot and back stitch, so I kind of overlap but not actually touch my stitching. And I do that on the other side too. So I have it drawn here, my 1/2 inch seam allowance, pivot, and again overlapping about 1/2 inch past my stitching and about just an 1/8 below. That will help keep this as tight as possible and not create a puckery point where we end. The closer we can get to our stitching without actually touching it, the better. If you end up way down here, you are going to get sort of a puckered look when you turn it right side out. So sort of snuggle right against that stitching, and that's why we have a zipper foot. So we're going to replace it now, our foot, with a zipper foot, and I'm going to put it off to attach it on the right side, hanging off more to the left. And I'm going to start us on this sort of edge here, just to show you how you snuggle right up. So I'm going to drop my foot right along my pink marking, but my foot is as close to the zipper coil as I can go without it pushing it over. Okay, and then that's where I'm going to start now. Make sure, I was about to do that, to change it back to a straight stitch, because we just use the zigzag to shorten our zipper. 0 for center needle and back to our 2.5 for stitch length, because we don't want to break our needle by hitting our foot. So now you'll go down right there, and it's right against our stitching but not on top of it, and I'm going to sew all the way around 3 sides. I should mention to you too, I've unzipped my zipper halfway down so that I can flip my pillowcase right side out when I'm done. So once you've sewn your 3 sides closed, I like to trim diagonal at my corners to reduce the bulk. So I'm going to go ahead in here and I'm going to just trim away my corners diagonally so that it reduces the bulk. It provides a sharper corner when turning to the right side. I don't get super close to my stitching. I get about 1/8 to 1/4 inch away, and like I said, this just helps reduce the bulk when we flip it right side out. So when you've trimmed all 4 corners, then go ahead and reach in through your hole of your zipper and flip it right side out, and we will test the fit on your cushion. Once you've flipped it right side out, you can use a point turner to get really corners turned really nicely. You could use a pencil, even a little bit of the top of your scissors. Just gentle though, that you're not being too aggressive on your corners, because you don't want to actually poke a hole into your lovely pillow cover at this point. And this just gives it a little bit nicer and sharper of a corner. So you can do that to the 4 corners, and then I will now put my pillow in to show. There's our new pillow cover. It's added a new life to the old cushion that I had, and it fits nice and snug. It gives it a lot of sort of puff again to it and fits nice and tight the way my desired look was. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe for more easy to do projects.